another budding young star in Arkansas at the tight end position? I think so. Welcome into episode 45 of the Woo Pig Weekly podcast in the home field studio, your weekly source for all things Arkansas Razorbacks. As always, episode 45 is brought to you by Home Field, home of the premium collegiate apparel, vintage and current. You can go check them out today. And, they've got a lot of fantastic Razorback designs, as we've been saying, week in and week out. You can use that promo code Variety Sports in all caps to receive 15% off that first order, thanks to Variety Sports Network. So go check out them. They got tons of shows for you to check out, ranging from Major League Baseball, NFL, fantasy football, several different college shows. Go check it out. We got a lot of stuff going on. And just a lot of things coming in the future. But back to Hog Sports, as we'll start out with our Week 4 recap for Arkansas football, where Arkansas falls in a close one, 34-31. And, even with this being a loss, I felt a lot better about this game than after last week's loss. And I think that's due to we had a lot better play this week. So just to overview, what was your take on this week's loss against LSU?
Well, I thought we fought hard. We talked about it in previous week's episode, kind of in our prep episode, I guess you could say, around this is always a tight game. It doesn't matter how bad we are or how good they are or how good we are and how bad they are. There's been some years like that in the past too. So it seems like this game is always close for the most part. I think the only one in recent memory that wasn't close was when they had Joe Burrow there and all the freaks on that 2019 team. That was just amazing to watch, frankly. But anyways, most of these games are always hard fought between Arkansas and LSU, and I think this one was another one that kind of fit that same game mold. I was pleased to see that we gave ourselves a chance to win this game. We had some mistakes. We'll talk about it a little bit. There were some critical mistakes that really cost us in this one, honestly. I think this was a game we could have won I'm not going to say very easily, but we could have gave ourselves even more of a chance to win if we'd have done a couple of things a little better and limited a couple of the false start penalties and things of that nature later in the game. We still have some issues there. I thought we got better on the offensive line if you just kind of want to look at it from an overall standpoint, but I still think we made quite a few mistakes there as well. But you do got to give the guys credit. I mean, you're playing in a packed LSU Tiger Stadium at night in Baton Rouge. I mean, it was loud and proud down there. So you got to give the LSU fans credit on that pre-snap communication standpoint. So props to them on that. It was a hard-fought game all around. I thought we made some improvements that we can build off of going into the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it was one of those things where you at least saw improvement from, the BYU game to this game in, several different areas, I feel like. And we'll get to that. But, this was another game where Arkansas lost by 3 points. And Arkansas and LSU was favored by 17.5. This is the third straight year that the game has been decided by 3 points or less. And so, you can't ask for much more as far as the fight this team had. Like you said, a few things to correct, but, nothing terrible. It was good to see Arkansas battle with a top team. I think a lot of people have said this is one of probably the best team, at least maybe Bama, that Arkansas will see the rest of the season, which I feel like is a valid point. And we'll dive into some stats here for this game. So KJ Jefferson came out and went 21 of 31 for a 67.7% completion rate in this game, threw for 289 yards and 3 touchdowns, had 2 interceptions as well. And he also had 16 carries for 48 yards, where he averaged 3 yards per carry. So not a bad game for KJ. You do have those 2 interceptions, but what can you do when you start SEC play, especially against a good LSU defense like they had? But, I think it was good to see him come out, and I think he seemed a little bit more like your traditional, normal KJ, the way he is able to move around out of the pocket, make some plays with his legs, and not only just keep plays alive and not necessarily taking sacks when he's pressured, and was able to just, have that almost spidey sense, if you say, when he could feel pressure coming in that pocket, be able to help himself.
Yeah, there were a couple of big plays that really stand out where he was able to extend it later in the game. That Luke Haas touchdown kind of down the sideline, kind of almost reminiscent of last year, I think it was, to Dominic Johnson down the sideline 2 years ago. Excuse me, 2 years ago down at their place, down the sideline where he really should have been tackled on a play, somehow squeaked out of it, kind of rolled to his right, and then found Johnson kind of streaking wide open down the sideline. It looked a lot like that play, just to Luke Haas this time. Very similar. He was able to kind of shift around in the pocket a little bit, squeak out to his right a couple of yards, and then basically extend it long enough just to let Luke Haas get open. So that was one of the things that stood out to me. I thought the offensive line did a little bit better in pass protection. I think he had an extra half second on a lot of those pass plays, which I think KJ's been holding the ball maybe just a hair longer than he should. I think it's getting better. And I think some of the reasons that's getting better is obviously the offensive line's giving him just a little more time. Plus, I think the receivers are slowly getting more and more chemistry. They look good, kind of out the gate, but I think they're getting even better at, when KJ does have to scramble, find a way to show them or find a way to show him your numbers from a receiver standpoint, get open, make it easy for KJ to find you kind of situation whenever he's having to scramble. So I saw a couple improvements kind of across the board in those regards there. Obviously that Luke Haas touchdown was a big example of that, but there were some other clutch third down conversions. I know LSU had us in 3rd and long. I can't remember how many times, and we converted on several of those and some really clutch pass plays. I thought there was good. You could see the good chemistry kind of happening between KJ and Armstrong, or KJ and Luke Haas. So Tyrone Broden got involved. We'll cover that a little bit more, and that was good to see. So I think there's been some uptick maybe over the last couple of weeks in some of the receivers and KJ getting on the same page, which is going to help him get that ball out quicker, which is going to make the offensive line not have to work so hard, which is kind of a domino effect on improving the team from top to bottom.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think, like you said, key improvements. I think we saw part of the offensive line look a little bit better. I still think we're struggling on that left side just a little bit. But overall, being able to give KJ just that little bit more time was crucial in this game. And like you said, that continuity and that relationship between him and those receivers are just going to continue to develop as the season progresses, especially with a lot of those guys being incoming freshmen and transfers that came in. So it's not like he's played with those guys 1 to 2 years before. He's having to develop that chemistry really fast in the span of just one off season and a few games here. So I think, like you said, that's starting to click a little bit more with some of these guys. But one thing we still need to figure out, and I think, is we've still got to get something figured out with our rushing attack. That's just still been lacking a little bit this game. As you had AJ Green start this game, but only have 3 carries in this game where he gained 0 yards. The guy in this game that took the carries on his back was Rashad Dubinion with 15 carries for 78 yards, where he averaged 5.2 yards per carry. He also had 3 receptions for 35 yards. I think we really switched to him as he was the guy that was having success in this game. It was very interesting just to see that, AJ Green had 3 carries and that was it for him. I don't know if he maybe tweaked something, had an injury or something, a reason why he was out, or if maybe just Rashad was seeing the field better that day, had the hot hand kind of, and Pittman went with him. You also had Dominic Johnson, 2 carries for 3 yards, 1 reception for -2 yards. So still not the greatest outing from our running backs. And I think you're really seeing, need for Rocket to come back, as a dynamic, as a playmaker as he is. You can't just replace that. Not saying these guys we got in the running back room aren't as talented, but he's just more experienced, has been in the program longer. I mean, you can't just take a guy like that out of your offense and expect to have the same success with another guy. So I think it's going to be big whenever we can get him back, and that might help our rushing attack. And also, I just feel like maybe our offense will start to maybe gel a little bit better just because he's another key piece and leader on that team. So that'll be interesting to see. And then I think an interesting point when you jump over to our receiving stats and look through these, stats, KJ only threw to 4 different receivers. That was it. These receivers stepped up big in this game. I said it intro to the show. Luke Haas, that's the name you want to write down. Bold, italicized, whatever you want to do, exclamation point. He's going to be big for Arkansas down the rest of the season, and I think in the years to come. As a true freshman, he had in this game in Death Valley at night, prime time, 100,000 fans. Wasn't a big deal for him. He just reeled off 6 receptions for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. Big time from him, especially like Seth said, there were several key third down plays where the ball went to him. And I think they talked to him after the game, and he had the point of saying he understands KJ is his quarterback, that he is a mobile, scrambling type of quarterback, and that, this is where you see his football IQ and knowledge come into play. That he said he noticed he's able to watch out for and see when KJ leaves the pocket, he just abandons his route and gets to an open spot in the field where KJ can get him the ball. That is incredible football IQ by an incoming freshman. And I mean, Arkansas is known for having really great tight ends. And I think Lucas just, had his coming out party in LSU, letting everybody know that there's probably another one on campus right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. This was a really great game for him. He's had some good ones so far this year too, outside of this one. But I kind of, to your point, this was really the highlight for him so far this season, breaking the century mark in yards and scoring 2 touchdowns. And he also had the 2-point conversion there at the end of the game to tie it before we unfortunately gave up the win on that field goal. But I mean, super clutch. I don't really know how else to explain this game for him. I mean, to your point, he was able to find soft points in the zones whenever KJ was having to scramble. He gets it. You know what I mean? You can, when you watch him play, you can just see that he understands defensive schemes and how to get open in certain schemes, whether he's going up against one-on-one in a man cover situation. He understands kind of how to utilize the other receivers' routes to not use a pick play, but almost kind of get his defender off of him a little bit, especially if he's getting getting matched up with linebackers. So he's done well in that department. But then whenever the defense is playing zone is where he's really shown to me so far, is where he's able to find those soft spots in zone coverage, whether it's cover 2, cover 3, something weird. He's really, really good at picking up on that early, and seeing that out of a freshman is really, really cool. I mean, we've had guys in the past be this good, but like, if he can continue this kind of production, I think he's got a chance to kind of be up in the upper echelons of the tight ends we've had in previous years. Hunter Henry obviously is one of the main ones that comes to mind. Jeremy Sprinkle, some of those names of recent years, at least. You can probably go back and find some other true studs, back 10, 20, 30 years ago. But man, I mean, this was a really exciting game to watch him play. I mean, it just seemed like every time we needed a big play, he was stepping up. And that's the thing that really reminded me of Hunter Henry. That literally felt exactly how Hunter Henry did back in the day.
Yeah, that's very true. He had one of those games where, like, he stepped up to answer that call maybe when other guys were having a tough time. You look at your other guys in this game that had receptions. You had Andrew Armstrong, another, like we said before, one of KJ's more preferred targets so far throughout the season, had 6 receptions for 76 yards. Another guy that had 3 receptions for 31 yards and a touchdown is Tyrone Broden, a guy that Pittman had said in press conferences before. He's a guy that he is extremely talented, wanted to get going, and you saw that in this game where, he got some playing time over Jaden Wilson. He was able to catch that touchdown pass in the end zone. I'd mentioned before, to me, with his size, he's an end zone target for KJ, being 6'7", one of the taller receivers throughout the league and, all of college football. And then you've got Mr. Dependable Isaac TeSlaa with 3 receptions for 31 yards. Not as featured in this game. I would like to see that change a little bit, get him the ball more, just because he's such a dynamic playmaker when the ball is in his hands, and is one of those guys that you can count on to make the catch. As long as it's within his catch radius, he's going to make that catch. So I think, like we said, positive things. This connection with these receivers are growing. You see guys like Lucas, freshmen, starting to really click. We mentioned it once that this college game really clicks for him. I think you're going to start seeing big numbers out of him, and it just so happened seemed like it's starting to go that way in this game. And then,
yeah, that's that. Oh, sorry, I'll just butt in real quick. I think one thing that we're really seeing, really in BYU game and this game, is you're starting to kind of see the cream rise to the top in our receiving room. The guys at KJ's really getting the trust built in, that are getting more open more often. They're getting the playing time a little bit more. They're playing more of the snaps. They're getting more of the targets. All those things combined. I think you're kind of starting to see that core unit form, and it's these 4 guys, maybe a 5th one in there with Jaden Wilson off and on. I think Broden needs to be that next guy just due to his size, and I think that's why you saw him really come out with LSU. I think he hadn't had as many snaps with KJ, so getting them on the same page maybe took a few more games, but I think you're going to see him have a bigger role going on down. But Luke Haas, Andrew Armstrong, Tyrone Broden, Isaac TeSlaa, those are going to be the names you hear a lot, I think, from a receiving standpoint. Obviously, you'll have some check downs to the running backs here and then. But I think those are really going to be some of the guys you hear a lot more that are the main targets for KJ that build that core, that you really go to play in and play out. I think we're starting to finally kind of see that form. I think those are going to be the guys that really are the ones you depend on through the rest of this season, the rest of these conference games. We got a brutal schedule coming up these next 3 weeks. So these guys are really going to have to kind of keep it up. I just hope everybody can stay healthy. That's one of the big ones.
Yeah, couldn't agree more that, staying healthy is one of those things where, that's always seemed to be Arkansas's problem in the past is, we get to a good point and then injuries hit. So staying healthy is going to, like you said, going to be key. And then in this game, when we look over on the defensive side of the ball, that defense, continues yet again to almost have that bend don't break mentality and have significant improvement from last season. We had another interception in this game. Dwight McLeod gets the pick against his old team, return for 15 yards. That was a big play for him. Getting another turnover. I think this defense just continues to improve as the season goes on, and they're continuing to pick up this new scheme that we're running here. And then when you look at guys leading tackles in this game, yet again, Jaheim Thomas at the top of the tackle chart here with 13 total tackles, 3 solos, and half a sack. You had Al Walcott with 8 total tackles and 5 solo. Chris Paul Jr. with 8 total tackles, 3 solo, 1.5 tackles for loss. And Hudson Clark up here in the top with 7 total tackles, 5 solo. He had a big game. In my opinion, he was coming in clutch and did really good about not letting guys get by him and actually wrapping up and making some tackles in this game. I think the only thing I will note is you saw our secondary in this game right there towards the end of the game seemed a little gassed in this game. So I think that's where maybe you have to try to start working a few more guys in the rotation here, especially since we're in SEC play. Competition level is ramped up to the max within the SEC. So, we're going to have to start rotating more guys in to keep fresh guys, fresh legs. And a guy that I think, a lot of people were saying got burned a little bit this weekend was Jaheim Singletary. He struggled a little bit this weekend. So, there's another guy that could look to, if he doesn't, kind of step up that play, could fall not out of the rotation, but have less snaps in this rotation as you go. So I think overall defense looked pretty well in this game. They kept us into this game. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, first thing I want to point out, I thought Singletary played a decent game. I know a lot of people are dogging him on Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff. He did get burned a couple of plays. You got to look at one of the guys he was covering all night, though, for LSU, Malik Neighbors. He's the LSU stud wide receiver. It seems like they always have one or two guys. You think of guys in the past, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Odell way back, players like that. This guy's another one. I don't think anybody in the SEC could have covered him. He had 130 receiving yards off 8 or 9 catches against us and 2 touchdowns. And he probably could have had more than that. He was open off and on all night, realistically. He's that good of a receiver. You're not going to be able to cover guys like that very well. You're going to have that in the SEC, to your point. The competition levels ramped up some. But I did see some good coverage by Singletary on him, but there was a couple of plays where, things broke down, or you could just see the speed difference. He just couldn't quite keep up. And you're going to have that every now and then on some of these elite, SEC wide receivers. So I don't see him dropping down the depth chart or anything like that, or anybody vying for his spot. I still think he's probably one of the top talents in our cornerback position, and I don't see him going anywhere. I think he's still our best bet there for sure. I just think he was unfortunately matched up against probably one of the SEC's top wide receivers. He had 200 and something receiving yards against Mississippi State last week. He absolutely torched Mississippi State. Burnt us pretty good on a couple of plays too, but this kid's legit. He's going to be probably first, second round top player. So you got to give a little bit of consideration to that. When some of these corners are matched up against those players, cornerback's probably one of the hardest spots to play in football, whether it's NFL or college, or high school even. It's just hard. So I don't want to dog on him too hard, because that was a tough matchup he had to deal with all night long, basically. But anyway, the rest of the guys, like you said, played great, had some good stats, had some great stops. I actually thought the defense, played really well. They played well enough for us to win this game. Kind of similar to against BYU. I thought the same thing then too. I mean, we were giving up some points, but nothing crazy. And it seems like when we need a stop, we get a stop, or at least get close to getting a stop, something of that nature, force a field goal or something like that, And sometimes the offense just kind of doesn't quite play off of that momentum, if that makes sense, and then go back and get their own score. So kind of got to get a little bit better on the overall team game side of things.
Yeah, that's true. And like you said, look at those matchups. I don't know if anybody else SEC, like you said, could cover Neighbors and not have him have one or two plays where he burns you. I mean, it's just tough to keep a guy of that caliber locked down all night. And so, like you said, don't want to dog him too much. Got to bounce back this week. Got a big game this week. And then you look at special teams. You had Isaiah Centennial, one kick return for 19 yards. So not a lot of opportunities there as the LSU kicker was putting them back through the back of the end zone all night. And then one guy you've got to applaud after, I feel like he had a really bounce back week after, struggling a little bit in the BYU game is punter Max Fletcher. He had a couple of bad punts in the BYU game where he struggled a little bit. But in this game, he came back, had some great booming punts in this game. But also, I think one of the key plays that he had in this game was we faked a field goal. He took the ball, ran, got the first down for Arkansas. That was a big momentum play for Arkansas. And, you can't ask for a guy to bounce back much better than that.
Yeah, that's really true. So kind of wrapping things up from our overall game review, we did have 11 penalties for 69 yards in this game, which that is an improvement compared to the BYU game. It's still more than you want. Thankfully, the penalty yardage didn't stack up as bad. They weren't as critical of penalties. We had a lot of false starts, the 5-yard type. So got to clean those up. Still have some room to improve there. The one thing that I didn't mention earlier, but wanted to kind of wait till after we went through some of the stats that I think is the reason why we lost this game, or at least a big portion of it, is clock management. And that comes down to the coaches. And there was a couple plays here and there where, I don't think KJ had everybody lined up correctly. I think they had some struggles getting the play calls in. I think there was some miscommunication between whether it was Enos and KJ. I don't really know. Getting the play in just didn't click correctly. I know right after that fake field goal that was ran for first down, we ended up having to burn a timeout. Not too long. I think it was the play, not right after that, but the one after that, where they had a hard time getting everybody on the right page, had to burn a timeout. It was like a minute into the third quarter. And then they had to burn another one later on in the third quarter. And then burn their last one with 20 seconds into the fourth quarter. So we had no timeouts left in this game when it got down into crunch time and we're trying to stop LSU, force a field goal, or maybe let them score. I really don't know. But you had no timeouts to be able to stop the clock. If you at least have two of those left, I think one of those you probably did need to take. I can't remember which play it was. I think it was the second timeout. We did need to take that one and not take the delay game penalty yards. But the other two, you probably could lose the yards. It probably would have been more beneficial to save the timeout. I know hindsight's 2020, but those really came back to bite us is what I'm getting at, that you didn't have any opportunities to stop the clock late in this game when it really would have been critical to save a few seconds. Even if you only have, 30, 40 seconds with no timeouts and get the ball back. I've seen people have, field goal drives to tie in way less than that in college and pros. So I think that was a big critical mistake that cost us a chance to really at least tie this game, if not win this game. I think we had plenty of other chances to win this game. I'm not trying to put all the blame in any one area. We had a lot of mistakes, a lot of issues, but I do think that one is one that needs to be cleaned up from a coaching standpoint, not just a player standpoint. Think all around the communication, getting plays in and stuff like that needs to get better. And those errors really stood out. And like I said earlier, you do got to give the LSU fan base credit. I think a lot of the issues was due to the environment. I mean, it was so loud there. They showed a decimal meter on the broadcast. I mean, it got up 96, 97 decibels. So that's really, really loud when you're down on the field, and that's just coming at you from all directions. So got to get that cleaned up. Got to get the mental mistakes cleaned up. Those are the ones that really can come back to bite you. You're going to have the blown plays and things of that nature. That's football. But where you can really make a huge difference in these games is clean up the mental mistakes.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better. That's one thing that I did notice. And like you mentioned, we were significantly down on penalty yards, but I think with those 11 penalties, we had 2 in the first half. The rest of them came in the second half, in crunch time. But you look at the 2 that we did have in the first half, you look at Arkansas's first 2 possessions where we drove down, had really good drives, got into the red zone, couldn't finish drives, whether it be to a penalty that, backs you up a little bit or whatnot, or like that management you said. But that's that. We've got to capitalize more on the red zone like that. That could have easily, instead of going up 6-0, we could have been up 14-0, which would have been big in this game. You saw the game was decided by 3 points. So, if we would have maybe capitalized on one of those games, although you can, what if all you want. But when you look at it in hindsight, if we could have got a touchdown in one of those games, that could have potentially changed the results of this game.
100%.
So, and then as we wrap up week 4 here, we're going to go around the SEC and look at other scores this week as Texas A&M beats Auburn 27-10. Kentucky beats Vanderbilt 45-28. Alabama beats Ole Miss 24-10. Tennessee beats UTSA 45-14. Florida beats Charlotte 22-7. Georgia beats UAB 49-21. Missouri barely edges out Memphis 34-27. And South Carolina beats Mississippi State 37-30. So nothing shocking this week. We talked about it briefly last week. I'm not surprised here that Bama came back, and got this win here. A lot of people were picking Ole Miss to come into Tuscaloosa and get that upset. I said if you check out the Saturday Showdown that we do over on the Variety Sports Network, I came out and said there's no way Alabama loses twice at home. If they do, I would love it for us to be the one that causes them to lose twice at home. But I'm not going to bet against Nick Saban, especially him against Lane Kiffin. So,
yeah, that was a game that stood out to me. That I wasn't surprised that Alabama won that game. I was surprised with the score. I did think it was going to be maybe a little bit higher scoring than that. I know Alabama's offense has had some struggles. They've had some quarterback issues, but Ole Miss's offense hasn't. Jackson Dart's been pretty solid most of the year. And I think this ended up being more of a defensive matchup than I was at least anticipating. I think most folks probably thought the same thing. Ole Miss only put up 10 points. I know Bama's defense is good, but they've showed that they're not just like that, just a stellar defense, of years past. They're solid. They're upper echelon of SEC solid, but they're not just, Georgia a couple years ago defense type scenario. So I was a little bit surprised to see the score as low as that one was. So that one stuck out to me. And then the other game that I was kind of keying in on a little bit, just due to one of our matchups later in the year, is the Mississippi State South Carolina game. I've got that one circled. That's a home game. That is, to me, that is a must-win game. These next 3 that we've got are going to be tough. They're hard games. If we can win a couple of them, awesome. If you don't win any of them, it's going to suck, but it's survivable from a season standpoint. You can still have an okay season at that point, and maybe still pull out 6-7 wins. That Mississippi State game, if you don't find a way to pull that game out against a team that's kind of struggling right now, hopefully still maybe struggling by then, that to me, that's going to be where the season has to, even if we go on a skid, that's where it has to pick back up. You have to win that Mississippi State game. They're a very beatable team. They've gotten beat twice back-to-back by decent teams. Nothing. Obviously, LSU's good, and they thumped them. But then South Carolina's not been the greatest so far. They've had a fairly decent season, kind of like us, not best, not worst kind of situation. And they handled them fairly well. That's a game that I've really got circled as a must-win game. And if we're unable to win that game, I think that's going to be an omen for a very poor season.
Yeah, that's very true. That's the game we come back home after this road stretch at. And, it needs to be a big crowd at home, come back home, like you said, whether we've went on a skid or we managed to, go 500 in this road stretch. That needs to be a key game for Arkansas, especially as we come back home for just a quick trip for that game. And then we're on the road again to Florida. So, like you said, that's going to be a pivotal moment in the season, and we'll just have to see how it goes. So we'll take a quick ad break, and we'll be right back here with, basketball news, cover some soccer, and we'll get into our Texas A&M preview.
You know what I like? I like to be comfortable. I also love representing my favorite sports teams. And in the clutch, I am able to have the best of both worlds. In the Clutch Apparel is your one-stop shop for all things sports. They have officially licensed gear from all your favorite teams and players from the NHL, MLB, NFL, and more. They have sports classic tees from yesteryear and beyond. Check out their full website in the link down below. When you enter the promo code Variety Sports, you get 10% off everything site-wide. Feel comfortable with your sports apparel and go over to their website now at intheclutch.com. And don't forget to use our code Variety Sports to get 10% off.
All right, we are back here with some basketball news as Arkansas's Red and White Showcase will be on October 4th. So this is your first chance to see this 2023-24 Razorback team in action, as the Red and White game will be held in Barnhill yet again. So this is going to be a big, exciting time for Arkansas basketball, as there's a lot of optimism going into this season. This could be one of the more talented rosters Muss has put together since in his time at Arkansas. He had a lot of talent last year with some freshmen, but I think if you just look at the overall combination of youth along with experience with some of those guys he got in the transfer portal, this Arkansas team can be very dangerous this season. And, it's exciting times when you're talking about Arkansas basketball here in Arkansas.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we keep Muss for a while and he keeps reloading teams like this, it's not really a matter of if, it's more of a matter of when he gets a natty here. I think it's going to happen. I really do. Maybe that's just some Razorback hope. You know what I mean? We get a little bit too excited at the beginning of the year, and then stuff always falls apart. But basketball team's always been competitive these last four years. And I think, seriously, if he keeps on reloading like this, this team's got serious potential with some of the guys he got to come back between Brazil, Devo, some of the transfers to come in, and then obviously the recruiting class coming out of high school is just reloaded. So he keeps doing this year in, year out. We're going to get one. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I think so. And if you haven't got a chance and you want to hear more about, what is expected out of Arkansas this upcoming season, go check out the Arkansas preview show over on Hoops Southbound. They put out some good content, really know their stuff. I had the opportunity to join that show, talk with David and Maddie about Arkansas's upcoming season. So, there's really a lot of breakdowns in that show that you should go check out. So if you haven't done that yet, go check them out over on Hoop Southbound on YouTube, as they're part of the Variety Sports Network as well. And as we hop over to Arkansas swimming diving, Arkansas had their first meet of the season where they took on Kentucky and won that meet 167.5 to 131.5. So good to see them start off the season with a good win there. That's big, is, for any sport, getting that first win of the season is really good way to start your momentum into the season. And talking about momentum, we'll let Seth cover here some Arkansas soccer, where we had some exciting matchups over this past weekend, and they were big time for some big time Razorbacks.
Yeah, no doubt. So first thing, obviously, we previewed it last week. Huge matchup with number 9 Alabama. We were number 11 at the time. I think we did actually get bumped up in the rankings. I've seen a couple different, depends on who you check. We're number 7 in a couple. We're number 10 in a couple. So we're up there in the top 10 in pretty much all of the major soccer rankings right now, after we took on Alabama on the 21st and won this match 5-0. So, it's a blowout in soccer terms, if we can say that here. So this was an awesome game to have such an outpouring on offense. So there was also a record crowd in attendance for this, with 3,660 people attending this game. So that's really, really cool to see. Obviously, it helps having a huge matchup like this in town. But I think a lot of that really just comes down to the publicity that the soccer team's gaining lately. There's been a lot of investment going to this crew. They've really performed well these last few years, and that's really starting to show from the fans' outpouring of support. So really happy to see that for the team. Bay Franklin scored Arkansas's first goal in the 4th minute off of a cross from Anna Potagil. So we've said it time in and time out. Seems like we have really good results whenever we're able to score early, and that was definitely the same MO in this game. Avery Wren scored the second goal at the 7th minute for her first collegiate score from a cross from Anna Potagil again. And then Anna Potagil proceeded with a goal of her own in the 15th minute off of a cross from Morgan White. So we scored 3 goals in the first 15 minutes of this match. So kind of put the pressure on early, and I think that played critical in being able to keep this a 5-0 win. Morgan White scored 2 goals of her own in the second half her first coming at the 53rd minute mark, as she outran the Alabama defense and pulled the goalkeeper out of the 6-yard box and scored in the lower right corner. Her second goal of the match came in the 69th minute of the match as a high arcing cross that was intended for Poto curl just enough to kind of hit off the top right of the goalpost and then side into the net. It was actually pretty crazy shot that was going around social media. I think it made Sports Center. I can't remember one of the posts it was on, but it wasn't top 10, but it was one of their soccer focused Sports Center pages. Phoebe Carver made her collegiate debut in place of Sierra Cotillard, and for good reason, as Sierra was called up to the Portuguese national team. So congratulations to her for that. I think she's actually playing in her first match with them tonight. And then following up on this, on the 24th, we faced Texas A&M on the road and grabbed a 1-0 victory. So not quite as the high-flying offense that you saw against Alabama, but still pulled off a really good 1-0 win. Defense has been playing phenomenally. So that's one thing that's really good to see. Arkansas's lone goal came from Kennedy Ball, assisted by B. Franklin and Kylie Delaney. So really a great stretch of Arkansas soccer. It's been a couple of cool SEC games to see, especially that Alabama game. That was just such a highlight game for the Arkansas soccer team, with the outpouring from fan support, the offensive explosion, just kind of everything seemed like a perfect storm there for that to be one of the highlight matchups so far this year. Following up on that, Arkansas's Morgan White was named the TDS to the TDS National Team of the Week. B. Franklin was named SEC Defensive Player of the Week. We're now back in the top 10, like I stated earlier, at number 7 in a couple of polls, and then number 10 in a couple of other polls. And then our next match will be on September 28th as we go on the road to take on Missouri at 6 p.m.
Yeah, definitely.
That is all I've got. What do you want to add?
Yeah, a lot going on for Arkansas soccer. I think they're really starting to find their groove here. Kobe Hale's got this team, it seems like in a good spot. 3-0 undefeated in the SEC right now, as we got that win over Tennessee, a couple weeks ago. Like we just covered, that electric match versus Alabama, where we just had an onslaught of goals. And then, getting that really key defensive victory against A&M, where, it took one goal, but our defense stepped up big in that game. I think you'll continue to see this team have success, especially at the high level. Colby Hale really knows what he's doing in this program, and I think you're going to just see this continued success throughout. And hopefully another NCAA tournament run for this team should be easily expected with the success they're having right now, if they can continue this throughout the rest of the season.
No doubt about it.
And then as we bounce over to Arkansas volleyball, Arkansas got their opening SEC matchup win as they beat South Carolina 3-0 and opens up conference play 1-0. They follow that up with a victory versus Texas A&M 3-1, and they'll take on Auburn tomorrow at 7 p.m. for another home match versus an SEC or another SEC matchup here. So, the volleyball team's rolling, soccer's rolling. It's good time for women's sports. And before you know it, we'll have Arkansas basketball here too. So things are about to get really busy here in Razorback Nation. So it's really good to see. And then kind of looking ahead here with Arkansas baseball, for how good and how well Dave Van Horn's recruited at Arkansas with baseball. This is a surprising stat for me, as Arkansas baseball won the college baseball's national recruiting championship for the first time at Arkansas. So that's big, with the amount of great classes Dave Van Horn's pulled in here at Arkansas. To see this is the first time that we've won this, it was a little shocking for me, but the reason we were able to win that is Arkansas landed a class that included 24 newcomers, 14 of those freshmen, 9 4-year transfers, and 1 junior college transfer. And so when you break down that, we had the number 1 recruiting class in incoming freshmen, but Arkansas also had the second best transfer class in the nation per 64 analytics. So, Dave Van Horn never fails. It's like we say with Muss. He doesn't rebuild. He just reloads year in and year out with, whether it be young, talented incoming freshmen or guys he pulls in from the transfer portal. We've seen that with different guys throughout the past few seasons. Look at last year with Yosenberger coming in from Kansas, Wagner coming in from Creighton, several different guys that have been key pieces of this Arkansas team transfer in and, just have success. Or you look at freshmen he's got brought in with Brady Tiger, guys like that have come in and had success early on in their careers. So, I think this is where tallying up for another exciting year of Arkansas baseball.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. I think it's a very similar situation. He keeps finding ways to reload. It's another kind of example of it's more of a matter of when, not if. He should already have one. If we're going to be real about it, I don't even want to bring that up. It hurts me every time I think about it. But I think you give him another couple of years, we're going to find ourselves back in Omaha in that final series and hopefully find a way to squeak one out. That's one of the hardest things to do is win a national championship in baseball. I mean, it's hard to win a national championship in anything. It's just tough, especially in that kind of tournament layout that we have to get to Omaha and to make it through the gauntlet that Omaha is in itself. But you keep on reloading like this, you don't have a whole lot of rebuilding years, so you give yourself the maximum amount of opportunities. I think he's going to find one of these years, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, very true. And I think you're right. It's a matter of time. He's one of the GOATs in college baseball for a reason. He knows what he's doing. We've heard it from guys, if you've listened to episodes of the show before, guys that we've talked to, Matt Goodhart, Tyler Spoon, guys like that come on here and have nothing but good things to say about Coach Van Horn. And I think that just is a testament to his type of character and the type of coach he is. And so with that, we'll jump into our preview of Arkansas and Texas A&M this Saturday in Jerry's World and AT&T Stadium. Unfortunately, we got stuck with the dreaded 11 a.m. kickoff. Never fun. But in this game, A&M starts out as a 6.5-point favorite with an over and under 55. And so this is going to be kind of a similar story as last week, as this always seems to be a good game between these two teams. In the past, it's been crazy overtime games from as long as I can remember when we started playing them in college back in 2013, whenever, they were working on coming over to the SEC and we had them here that first year. But then we started the games at Jerry World. It seems year in, year out, it was never every year is overtime, some type of overtime. And so this could be a big game for Arkansas. And like we mentioned earlier, we really need to win this game. I think this could be a key win. Looking up the two other road games we have on the schedule before we come home against Mississippi State. And if we want to go 500 in this road stretch, I think you got to start right here. Bounce back and looked decent last week against LSU, and I think continued improvement. If we potentially get Rocket back this week, that could be a key piece, for this game as well. When you look at it, A&M averages 450.8 total yards per game, 301.3 passing, 149.5 rushing, and they're allowing 273.8 yards per game, 164 of that passing, 109.8 rushing. So their defense has been a little bit, the numbers a little bit different from LSU, but when you look at it, I think their level of competition they've played has been not as high as, what LSU's had to play, especially week one being Florida State. We saw what happened between them and Clemson this past weekend. So when you look at it, the numbers can be a little deceiving. Like they could have a good defense, but I think it's just the competition they played. And so when you start breaking down this Texas A&M team, there's a different guy here I've got highlighted quarterback for good reason. Connor Wegman, their starter there, he was a true freshman last year, got playing time at the end of their year. Max Johnson is most likely going to start this game against Arkansas, as Connor Wegman went down in that game against Auburn this past week with an ankle injury. I've seen a few different things saying he was day-to-day, but then ultimately I think it came out and said that he's going to be out maybe 2 to 4 weeks with a, if you want to call it high ankle sprain. That's one of those injuries that's tough to recover quick from. And if you try to rush back too quick, we've seen numerous NFL players and other players try to come back too fast and just re-injure that ankle. So, I think they've already came out and said Max Johnson is most likely going to be the start of this game unless some type of, drastic healing happens with Connor Wegman's ankle. So we're going to go into this preview with saying Max Johnson's going to start at quarterback for A&M. He's 6'6", 230 pounds. Kind of been around the block a little bit. If that name sounds familiar, he started for A&M last year, but previous to that, spent a couple years at LSU, played him at LSU. So he's very familiar with the SEC and Arkansas. So you look at his stats on the season, majority is coming last week in relief of Connor Wegman. He's completed 20 of 31 passes for a 64.5% completion rate for 226 yards, 4 touchdowns. 0 interceptions, had 7 carries for -5 yards. So not a super threat on the ground. Not as mobile in a sense as maybe Connor Wegman is. So you look at him, pocket passer, but I think he struggled a little bit against us last year because he was that starter in that game at this point in time last year before I think he ultimately had an injury last year that allowed them to start Connor Wegman. But he's a guy that has that experience, is capable. So I'll be interested to see what we get out of him. What are you thinking with Max Johnson most likely getting the start this week?
Well, familiar face, like you said, I think he's good. I'm not going to argue that at all. I think Wegman, to your point, is more of a mobile quarterback, and I think that's why he's been getting the starts lately. But I think Max Johnson can throw the ball just as well as Connor can. So I don't expect to see a whole lot of backpedaling from their pass game potential. So we'll have to definitely kind of keep an eye on that. I do think it does give you a little bit of, I don't want to say breathing room, but you don't have to key on the quarterback being a run threat from a pocket containment standpoint as much as you did against Jaden Daniels, or as much as you would have to if Wegman was in this game. So maybe that changes our game plan a little bit about how we, corner blitz, pass rush. I don't know. I'm definitely no expert there, but I think you can scheme a little bit differently against Max Johnson than you could have Connor Wegman. So we'll see kind of how that plays out and how much of an impact that really has. But I think he's good. I don't think there's any arguing that. So we're definitely gonna have to be on our toes, especially from a pass game standpoint or from on defense. So there's definitely not going to be any easy players to cover, any easy outs or anything like that kind of going forward for the rest of the year. Like, everybody's talented, everybody's good, everybody has good teams. So it's tough. It's tough sledding.
Yeah, that's true. And then when you jump over to the running back position for A&M, they have 2 guys here that could have almost really split carries 50-50 throughout the season so far. One guy that they're having to really find an answer to the loss of Devon Achane, a guy that, was really a dynamic playmaker for them last year at the running back spot, got hurt, I think in the Arkansas game last year, honestly, if I can remember correctly. But, he's already burst onto the scene in the NFL with his game this past week as he played. He's now with the Miami Dolphins and had an incredible game. But that just shows you what type of player they lost and having to fill those shoes. And those 2 guys that they're using right now is Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss. Amari Daniels is a 5'9", 205-pound running back. So on the smaller type size, similar type, build to Achane. So this season so far, he's had 39 carries for 234 yards and 2 touchdowns, 7 receptions for 52 yards. And then Le'Veon Moss, 6'2", 210 pounds, 29 carries for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then 2 receptions for 7 yards. So, they're kind of running back by committee right now with these 2 guys that, like we said, are having to fill those big shoes of Achane. And then when you jump over to probably one of the key guys we're going to focus on, just like last week, they've got a stud receiver in Evan Stewart, 6', 175. So not the biggest guy, but he's fast. And I think that's what we're going to have to watch out for in this game. Just kind of like we said with Malik Neighbors, we got to really not necessarily be able to lock him down, but just slow him down and not get burned frequent, and maybe limit that to hopefully not touchdowns, but maybe only a handful of big gains or big dynamic plays by him. On the season, he's had 22 receptions for 307 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, looking at these playmakers for Texas A&M, what are you thinking as far as, our scheming matchup kind of will be?
Well, I think it's very similar to how we schemed against LSU. They've got a decent run game, not anything crazy off the charts. Very similar to how LSU was. LSU had a couple good running backs, pretty decent run game, but nothing just, astronomical. You really got to key in on where they're going to be slinging the ball all over. And a lot of that comes back to who is their offensive coordinator. You got to remember Bobby Petrino's over there on the opposite sideline, and he likes to get a little crazy on offense and sling the ball around a lot, maybe call some weird trick plays here and there. So I think this is going to be a game where you've really got to expect Petrino to call the best game he has of the year it's against Arkansas. There's going to be some, I don't want to say bad blood there necessarily, but there's going to be a desire from him to beat us, maybe even more so than some of the other games on the schedule. So got to definitely kind of think about that. I think I don't think you want to play conservative on defense. I do think the way you're going to have the best results is being able to get to Max Johnson, at least off and on. How often can we have success on our blitz packages? You can't blitz every play, but when you do blitz, can you get home? At least rush the throw, get in his grill, maybe bat down some throws, even if you don't, hit him or are able to get the sack on him. Very similar, MO to what we said last week against Jane Daniels at LSU. You're not going to get him every time. Just whenever you do blitz, how effective are you at altering the play? And then I think another thing that I thought I saw some pretty good improvements on was some coverage disguises against LSU, where it wasn't always prevalent on what we were about to do. We had some success on a few blitz that were hidden blitzes. I don't know how much we're really going to do those types of schemes, but I think those types of plays where you run some funky stunts, maybe drop a lineman, bring a linebacker from the opposite side, can you disguise some of those and get some unexpected pressure? That's going to be big in this one, I'm pretty sure, especially with it being a quarterback that's not as mobile. You have a little bit more of a chance to kind of pin your ears back in a way and try to get there quick. So those are the things that I'm looking to see. I don't think we're going to have a ton of difficulty stopping the run. Obviously they're deep, they're good. It's going to get tough there in the last half of the game just to kind of keep up from a defensive standpoint. I think in this game it's going to be one of those battles for time of possession. Whoever can win time of possession and keep their legs fresher on defense later in the game may have a little bit more of an edge, because I think we match up pretty well on a lot of the paper metrics. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's one thing I'm going to be looking for. Like you said, I think it's going to start with these guys up front, Landon Jackson, Cam Bach, Trajan Jeffcoat, guys like that. They're going to have to get that pressure and collapse that pocket around Max Johnson, force him out of the pocket, or, like you said, get home, have 1, 2, maybe 3 sacks in this game where you can kind of get him rattled a little bit on his toes. But I think it ultimately comes down to this game. This is, especially with Bobby Petrino on the other side, this is going to be chess, not checkers for sure in this game on what he tries to do compared to what Travis Williams and Marcus Woodson are going to do on defense, who can out scheme who in a sense and come up with success. But then when you look on the flip side of that, Arkansas's got to perform offensively in this game. We can't have situations where we get in the red zone and come away with just 3 points. That's fine maybe every now and then, but you can't consistently expect to win if we're going down and just kicking field goals every time. And I think that starts with, kind of rolling into the injury update for Arkansas. Rocket is still questionable for this game. There hasn't been a definite yes, he's playing, no, he's not. It was reported today that he was taking all first team reps and team drills and looked better than any other day at practice since his injury. So I think that's really a good sign. And that's just from one source. We don't have the whole picture here yet. Pittman hasn't really came out and said anything for sure yet. But I think you look to, if you do have Rocket back and he's as close to 100% as he's been all season, that could be a key piece for Arkansas that really maybe helps elevate our offense to get a victory in this game. I mean, like we said at the beginning of the show, a talent like him, if you can get him back and insert him into the game plan, and maybe not even, full time, have him split carries, but at least getting him on the field for some plays where he can use his dynamic playmaking to help Arkansas in any type of way he can is going to be big. And so, expectations, improvements needed from Arkansas in this game. My number one, get Luke Haas the ball. We saw what happens when you do that in this past game. Good things happen. On the season so far, 4 games into his freshman career, he has 15 receptions for 239 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think that's big by any freshman in the country to be able to come up and put up numbers like that. And so I think you've got to keep feeding him the ball. He does a really good job about, like we talked about, when he notices KJ maybe gets out of the pocket, just finding that soft hole in the zone or finding that hole in the field where, KJ can find him, get him the ball in some space and let him run and do his thing. So that's going to be big. Another thing, we've got to keep seeing this continued improvement from the O-line. It may not be significant but I thought we looked, a few percentage points better, enough to give KJ time to find his receivers. And, that's really what helped us stay in this game, is some big plays by KJ, just because that little bit of extra time that the line was able to give him. And I think that was due to the return of Devin Manuel. He's a guy that kind of was injured in the fall camp, didn't get as many reps as Coach Pittman would like him to. That's why you had Andrew Chambly, getting the start at the beginning of the year. He is a freshman, so he's a guy that on that left, tackle spot has been a struggle for us, along with that guard spot. Brady Latham has had a struggle this season. He didn't struggle as much last year, but he's a guy that I think with his experience, he can get it figured out, but he's going to have to get it figured out soon if we're going to have any, type of success. And, that's going to be key in keeping KJ healthy. And then finally, for me, it's, secondary has to keep up the good work they've had so far this season. Like we've said, everybody's going to have those plays where they get beat every now and then, but it's just minimizing those plays that we have and being able to keep up that bend, don't break mentality and, keep forcing turnovers. I think we've had a turnover in every game this season, whether it be an interception, forced fumble by that secondary. So that's going to be big for Arkansas as well. Anything, expectations you want to see, improvements from your side there, Seth?
Yeah, I think you kind of covered most of it. One of the big ones, obviously, is can that O-line make maybe just a couple more percentage point improvement? Maybe have just a few less penalties. Can we knock those penalties from 11 down to 8, whatever that may be? I thought we had a really good first half from a penalty standpoint against LSU, and then I think fatigue and we were maybe trying to force the issue a little bit too much on some plays, and the guys were getting jumpy. Plus, it was loud. I think they made some improvements, and I think if they can kind of keep chipping away, keep getting a little better each week, getting a little deeper each week with some guys getting healthy, to your point. So that's going to be one of the big things I want to see. Another thing I want to see is, like you said, how much do we run Rocket if he does play, and who does he split time with? AJ Green had a huge game in this matchup last year. Do you think he has opportunity to kind of repeat that? I don't know. I thought Dubinion was the hot hand against LSU. He's a little bit bigger body than AJ, and I think that's what we needed in a real physical matchup with LSU. You might need the speed more against A&M. I really don't know. So I'll be curious to kind of see who comes out hot and ready, from the running back room, whether it is Rocket being healthy and him kind of coming out and maybe starting strong. I don't know. But I think that keys in directly with the offensive line being able to play well out the gate too, not have those penalties when you're in the red zone to back you up and force you to kick field goals or to get you behind the chains early on. If you're on the opposite side of the 50, you take a 1st and 10 and you get a holding call and then get a false start call on the play right after that, and boom, it's 2nd and 25 in a hurry. So you got to really avoid those mental mistakes. And another thing I'm really looking to see improvement on is clock management. I mean, I really do think that was critical in the loss to LSU. I'm not going to say we'd have won that game if we had 2 timeouts left there at the end of the game. I don't know. But it'd been nice to see and actually give ourselves that opportunity to utilize those timeouts when they were needed, and see if you can kind of have a 2-minute drill kind of type drive to go down and either tie the game or win the game. So I think those things are going to be critical. Those minor improvements on offense, reduction of the errors across the board, really. And we had some penalties on defense as well. We had a offside penalty late in the game that did hurt. But anyways, and then obviously clock management. So really, to me, looping all those things together, it feels like we're there from a talent standpoint. We're there from a scheming, playmaking. I think Dan Enos and KJ are getting on the same page. I think there's been a little bit of a rocky start there to some extent on some play calls here and there being a little weird or whatever, being in shotgun on 4th and 1, stuff of that nature. But I think it really comes down to getting prepared more mentally than we have been all year. I think that's really where we faltered the most, is in the mental stance of the game. And I think that's where some of our biggest improvements could be realized. And I think those are some of where the improvements can be realized quickly. I know those things aren't easy to fix, but I think you can fix them quicker than you can some of the physical issues if you're getting out conditioned or if you're just getting outran on some of these plays. To our point earlier, the secondary really isn't getting beat near like they were last year. If you watch these games and give them the eye test, we look tremendously better in the secondary between our linebackers having more speed, our secondary, the corners and the safeties, I thought Hudson Clark has looked phenomenal this year. I mean, really, he hasn't had a play where I've thought he's looked like he didn't belong in the SEC yet. You know what I mean? Where, sometimes in the past few years, some people have kind of argued that. So I think there's been some significant improvement there. I think we're there from the talent and things of that nature and the scheming. It's the small errors that we've got to correct, the mental errors that we really can have some quick improvements on that I think could flip-flop what's been a little bit of a rough start and turn this year into a really good year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So this is going to be an exciting matchup for Arkansas. I think this is going to be another one of those games that's battled out and is going to be a close game when all is said and done at the end. When dust settles, it's going to come down to maybe who makes that extra play, who gets that extra, momentum drive. We saw that last year with, that KJ fumble. That was a big. I think that's really where that game started going downhill. And then you saw that struggle last year where that kind of bled over into, Cam Little missing that field goal that could have been crucial in that game. Part of that, not saying it's 100% the fault. He's a fantastic kicker. I just hope they have the NCAA goalposts up this year. So
it's the little things, man.
Right. And so with that, we will preview some upcoming events here as we're wrapping up this week's show. That was our preview for Texas A&M and, another, like we said, big weekend for Arkansas football. This could be key going down the stretch, and we have a gauntlet coming up with Ole Miss, Alabama. Ole Miss they've announced it next week, 6:30 under the lights. So it's going to be another primetime matchup for Arkansas, against a really good Ole Miss team that has a really good guy behind under center and a experienced coach as well. So upcoming events, you've got Arkansas volleyball taking on Auburn September 27th tomorrow at 7 p.m. Arkansas soccer going on the road to Missouri September 28th at 6 p.m. And as we just got finished previewing, Arkansas versus Texas A&M at AT&T Stadium at 11 a.m. this Saturday. We've got several men's and women's tennis, golf, events sprinkled in throughout this entire rest of this week and weekend. So keep up with things as you can, and we'll keep you updated as much as we can. And with that, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and check out our YouTube page on YouTube. Give us all those views. It helps us help you keep updated, helps us continue to grow the page. And so we thank you for listening to today's episode of Woo Pig Weekly, and we'll be right back here with you next week.